Welcome to the Persistence Project, where we talk about all things strength training from mindset to max effort. I am your host, Rob Allen. I'm a strength coach and a powerlifter, and I started this podcast to pick the brains of my peers, my other coaches that I know, athletes and practitioners within the strength space about why they got into the pursuit of strength and helping others get strong. This podcast is brought to you by Jacked and Juiced Apparel, who have been supporting strength sports and producing awesome training apparel since 2022, and East Coast Supplements in Dubbo. Today on the show, we have Alex Downs from South Coast Strongman in Wollongong. He's the owner of that gym. He's a coach there. He's also the owner of the newly opened Barbaric Barbell in Ingleburn. This is all in New South Wales. He is a powerlifter in the super heavyweight class with the best total of 770. He has competed in Strongman for many years. He coaches both sports. Also a junior squad NRL coach for the West Tigers with strength and conditioning. And we're going to get into some strongman stuff today. And Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for driving up the highway. You're competing tomorrow, or are you just handling some clients?
Handling some athletes.
Yep.
So we've got 2 athletes from the gym competing, and then I've got one of my athletes competing as well. So.
Yep. Awesome. So that's a qualifier for Australia's Strongest?
No, Australian Strongman Alliance Nationals.
That's the ASA, yeah.
ASA,
okay.
yeah.
I was having this conversation with one of the strongmen at the gym the other day and was trying to get my head around all
the different federations.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with, especially like powerlifting's one thing, strongman's another.
Yeah.
Like trying to find the routes for my strongman clients is very interesting. But appreciate you coming up and making the time. What got you into the gym?
To be honest, I've always been very sporty from the get-go. I played soccer when I was younger. I think earliest was 4 or 5 straight into soccer. Did that for about 10 years. Obviously, being the taller kid, I got stuck straight into goalie and covered the most size. So that was did that for 10 years. Had a good sort of run doing that, but with all the boys that used to hang out with playing footy, I then decided to jump over to NRL and started playing that. And from the NRL was where we sort of got into the gym and everyone was training and all the boys would, your typical bro session on a Monday, chest, and go through that. And that's sort of what got me into it. And from there, it's straight in.
Yep. And when did you find strength sports?
Strength sports, I was always in strength gyms. Like the gyms that I was training at were old bodybuilding gyms, like Olympus in Bradbury, City Gym in Campbelltown. It was very much old bodybuilding, the ones where the machines used to have seat belts and stuff. So I was always around that sort of environment. So the strength side was, it was always, when I was younger, you sort of see that as like the big guys of like, they must be strong, all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until I think it was 2016 where I went on a boys trip to Hong Kong, and the Arnold Classic Asia was the first and only year that they ran it. And I was sort of walking through the expo and sort of seeing the big strongman pulling trucks and, doing stones and all that sort of stuff. And from that, it was like sort of come back to Sydney and tried to find a gym that sort of did what we do. And then, I found PTC MacArthur, and that's sort of where it started in 2016.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And so initially you said earlier when we were talking before we recorded that powerlifting is relatively new for you.
It is.
So Strongman was where you started?
Strongman was where I started. The idea of the pulling trucks and lifting, stones and... Yeah, that's right. So the idea of lifting stones, pulling trucks and all that sort of spectacle events was always, something that appealed to me.
Yep.
It was, sort of started young doing all the novices and trying to get into that, and that's sort of where that kicked off.
Yep. So when your first competitions were around that time, 2016?
Yeah, so I basically went straight into the deep end. The gym that I trained at, which is PTC, they had a couple of novice events and jumped into that and sort of helping out with back then I sort of look at it's like they were the amateur titles that helping out at and moving yokes and doing all that sort of stuff with the gym. And it was sort of seeing the big boys come in and definitely 400 yokes and kind of got me hooked straight off the bat. So did a couple of novice events. Travelled down to Canberra and did another novice event and ended up taking it out, and that was kind of my entry into the amateurs, or that's how I seen it as, you win a novice and jump up into the amateur run. So
when did you move out of that into like the open categories?
It would have been probably a year into training, going from, I think it was the second year after the novices, I kind of wanted to qualify for all the comps.
Yeah.
And there was, I think it was 2017 where it was, I did a competition that qualified me for states. 2 weeks later, I did a qualification event to qualify for nationals. And then I think 2 weeks after that was then New South Wales Strongest, and 2 weeks after that was nationals. It was about, it was havoc, but best way to learn and throw myself in the deep end.
So the typical strongman path, of course, is to do every competition humanly possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is a conversation that is consistent in our gym because we have we're a powerlifting gym with a very strongman contingent as well, but we all laugh about that sort of stuff regularly. Those guys do every comp imaginable.
Pretty much.
We're all doing one a year.
Yep.
So you did lots of comps, 2017, 2018. What did that look like?
So 2018 was trying to get an Arnold's qualification.
Yep.
It was where all the big boys started going, and I kind of seen it. That's where the next step I wanted to.
Yep.
Trying to do the New South Wales Strongest, and obviously trying to do my best in that.
Yep.
Towards the start of 2018 was the Tamworth Strongest Man. End up winning that event, which then gave me the qualification to get into the Arnold's itself. And that was sort of like, the high point for my sort of what I thought at that time was like the grand hurrah of making it into Arnold's. And then, I think it was the March that year that I sort of competed at the Arnold's, and basically my goal was to not come last because obviously going up against a lot of the bigger boys and guys that I still talk to these days and sort of reminisce of sorts. But the whole goal of that event was just to not come last, and didn't. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, right. Where did you come?
Second last. Didn't come last, but that's it.
That's not last.
Yeah.
I think my first sanctioned powerlifting meet, I had the same goal.
Yep.
Don't come last.
Yep.
And I came second in my weight class because there was only 2 of us.
Yep.
And he out-totaled me by, I think it was 200 kilos.
Yeah, lovely.
At the time, and I was just like, I don't deserve to be on this podium.
Yep.
But I came last specifically in that one. But the first time I was in a full flight, I was just like, don't come last.
Yep.
And it's so fulfilling to not come last.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's your main goal. That, as you just said, the guy's 200 kilos above you.
Yeah.
That you're still going to get beat, but you just don't want it to be as hurtful.
Yeah, that's it. So 2018, made the Arnold's. 2019, you moved on to doing quite well and doing some ACT comps. ACT
2019 was definitely my biggest year. I managed to take out ACT Strongest Man, which was a huge thing for me. Later that year, I then entered Static Monsters down in Canberra and managed to take that out as well.
Yep. What were your numbers at that?
It was a 350 axle deadlift and a 140 log, so it gave me a 490 total of that year.
Nice.
So that was good.
Yep.
And then that year I then went on to go to nationals and ended up coming 4th.
Yep.
So that was sort of the high of the year. And then to finish off 2019, I ended up getting the invite to the Southern Hemisphere's Strongest Man, which was planned for March 2020, and we all know what happened in March 2020. So, it was, we were all prepping. I was sort of on a real good peak leading towards some really sort of strong lifts and doing my best training lifts. And then, unfortunately, COVID hit in March 2020 and kind of destroyed all those plans.
Yeah.
So,
powerlifting being new, when did you decide to give that a crack?
I've always enjoyed powerlifting, the whole squat bench dead. I've always liked to test my maxes, and I'm very much trained by myself and just do the best I can. And in the gym, you've always got that sort of perception of, if I don't get this, I'm sort of crumbled or I'm under or something like that. Yes. So the idea of trying to train to my max was if I could lead towards it and have some people around me and then comp just go as hard as possible. Yep. That was sort of the intent behind it.
Yep.
I think it was... I'll have to double check. I think it was 2020 or 21 that I did the Battle of the West at PTC.
Yep.
That was my first weight cut down to 125s. It was just after a shoulder injury, but I sort of kept pushing through. That was my first weight cut of sorts. In Strongman, it was I'd come into Strongman about 120, 125.
Yeah.
And then you see all these big guys. Like I was sort of, when I was competing was with like Eddie Williams and stuff like that. So it's like the nationals that I went to, I was the lightest opens competitor by 35 kilos and I was weighing 130. So it's like, it was definitely a wake up call. I still gave a mid pack run, so I was definitely happy with that when it was up in the Gold Coast. But yeah, from the sort of being the lightest athlete in the opens class at 130 by 35 kilos was like a big, I need to get big.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I did get big, but it wasn't the right way, and sort of ate everything that I could see and put on a lot of fat and a lot of width, and sort of realised after a certain point that as much as they say mass moves mass, it's only when it's muscle.
Yeah, yeah, a bit of fat helps, but not too much is not
exactly
not advantageous.
Yeah,
particularly in strongman because you got a lot more moving events and you need to be a bit fitter.
Yeah, well fatter. And truly.
Yeah. So you competed 2021, 20.
Around that, yeah.
And did you move fully away from strongman, or you still kept?
No, I've always done. So in 2019 was when I started South Coast.
Yeah.
At the end of November 2018, I purchased a property down in Wollongong, so I moved down there, and whilst I was down there, realising that a lot of the gyms down there didn't sort of have what we do.
Sure.
So I kind of spoke to one of the gyms down there and said, this is sort of what I do. Would you be interested in housing some equipment in the corner, as usually most of the strongman stuff is?
Yeah.
It kind of started from there. And then I just sort of started accruing all of the equipment and going across stones and platforms and logs and all that sort of stuff. And then I think they ended up shutting. It was around March the following year, and that was sort of what pushed me into building my own gym.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah.
And so when you opened that, you had a crew already, obviously. Training under you. Were you coaching them, or was it just?
Yeah, so it was very much like one-on-one PTs, small base. I think I had sort of 6 or 7 athletes, but it was consistent of trying to run classes and trying to sort of help these athletes do what I did, how I started, and sort of pushing them that way as well. So
yeah, right. So opening the gym, you had somewhat of a client base to get it going.
Yep.
Because that's obviously the scariest part of opening a gym is, do we have the people to come? Obviously, you want to know that you've got some people coming over with you. What did that look like when you started? How many clients did you start with, or how many members did you start with?
Well, it started out when I opened Port Kembla, it was 60 squares. It was tiny. It was purely just somewhere to store equipment. Yeah. And it was I basically had to be there to open the doors to let people train. Yeah. I sort of sold it as a personal training studio to start with. It was all my clients that would come in. I would do the training sessions, and I started doing that way. Then it started eventuating into people just wanting to come and use the equipment, because the equipment that we had were, your warlords and your dominators and all that sort of stuff, and they wanted competition grade equipment. Yep. So we started opening it each afternoon from, I think it was 5 till 8 or 5 till 8:30. Basically when I finished, I still work full time, so I'm still full-time government worker, have been the whole time. Yep. So it was very much trying to navigate working full-time, opening the gym, but I was still training. So it was I was still there. So to be able to let people in, then train people and sort of keep that moving, it was quite simple. So it was just about the juggle. Yeah.
So were you were obviously coaching before that when you had people in the other gym that you were renting space out. When did you actually start coaching, and what did that what was the impetus to start that?
The idea of coaching was very much I sort of had a game plan. In the early days when I first sort of got into Strongman, was I knew that I'd want to open a gym. My goal was to, the business plan was very much, I actually started out with a gymwear brand. So it was called Barbaric Gymwear. Okay. Some people that watch may know, I know, a couple of guys at Coal City still have a couple of shirts I see around in the gym. It was started out when I got into Strongman. I started that about building a group of like-minded individuals. With the gymwear then came obviously the exposure to be able to help people. And from that, it was then, all right, beautiful, I can create the community, and then I can help the people in that community. And then with everything that sort of came of that, it was to then fund the facility itself, so that I could then house those people. That was the whole game plan. Owning a gym has been something I've always wanted to do the moment I had stepped foot in a gym.
Yeah.
I was like, this is amazing. Like, this is really cool. Like, imagine having one of these for yourself. Yeah. Like, it's all grand scheme things. It's like, you know, when you're young, you think, oh, this is great.
Yeah,
like,
well, that's the question rattling around my head is what's the reality like compared to your dream of owning a gym?
Oh, it's hard. Yeah, it was a lot harder than I expected. There's no need to sugarcoat it. Like, it's fun now that South Coast is well set up and, you know, it's a lot less stressful. Like, still stressful, but not as stressful as what it used to be.
Yeah. It must be doing well enough that you've decided to be crazy enough to open a second one.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly right. But the whole game plan was very much to build a facility to allow people to come and go as they please.
Yeah.
Like, I never wanted it to be an area where I had to be there to let people in. Mm-hmm. So it was more about creating an environment where people could come in, do what they needed to do, and leave. It was never like you had to be a part of classes. You had to be, you know, like it was as much as we offer casuals to come and train, it was more of just a membership, and that was your access to then come in, use all the equipment, Strongman powerlifting, and then, you know, do what you need to do and move on.
Yeah, so contrary to the name South Coast Strongman, you do have monos and comp benches and
we have everything.
A lot of powerlifters there.
Yeah, our left side of the gym, so the sort of way that it looks at if you're looking at the gym itself, the entire left side is very much your Hercules holds, your fingers, your stones. Like we've just picked up another 2 stones. We've got like 20 Atlas stones now from 30 kilos to 220. Yeah. It's an absolute huge run.
I saw that post the other day, actually. I was like,
yeah, absolutely. Like at the current moment, we've got the biggest stone run in New South Wales, they reckon. So I was like, I'll take it. Yeah, that's an accolade I'll take.
Yeah.
And then, the right-hand side is very much we've got 2 monos, a combo, 2 benches, 3 squat racks up the back.
Yeah.
But the goal about South Coast was to create a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Like we've started investing into a lot of the American Body Masters kit. You know, we've got all the cable machines. We've got, you know, your bicep, tricep, lat pull down, seated rows, shoulder press, chest press, all that sort of stuff. And then upstairs, we've got your sort of GHDs, your back extensions. Like we didn't want people to have multiple gym memberships. Like we wanted people to say, all right, I'm going to do Strongman, but I can only go to that gym to do my Strongman. Then I have to keep any time or something like that. Yeah. With South Coast, the idea of the moment we turn 24 hours, obviously then seen an influx of people that, oh, well, I don't have to have 2 memberships. I can train here and get it all done.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the goal of like building that gym.
Right, and so you've been in multiple locations. Can you open in Port Kembla?
So started at Port Kembla. Again, sort of as the PT and sort of building the reputation of South Coast Strongman. Like I started as South Coast Strongman right off the bat.
Yeah.
Within the first year, we outgrew it. So I came across a lot of good quality equipment real fast off the marketplace and all that sort of stuff. And then it was a matter of I need bigger room, I need more space. And at the time it was September 2020, peak COVID, everything shut. A gym in Albion Park Rail ended up closing down, and a real estate agent actually reached out to me like, would you be interested? Come down, have a look. Yeah. I started at 60 squares. This gym's 300, so it's 4 or 5 times the size. Yeah. Looking around, like this is a gamble. Like, obviously, peak COVID, we're not open, so everything's shut. We sort of negotiated and managed to secure it, and then from there, it was very much I've got it now. I've got to make it work. Yeah. So it was then just I was very lucky, and I still say this to everyone as well. Like through COVID, I was lucky to keep working. Like as in the government sector, we were classed as essential, because it was the housing, like I work in the housing sector. So that saved me. Yeah. So during the lockdowns, during all that sort of stuff, I was lucky enough to have enough money behind me, and then to sort of keep ourselves going without actually closing. Yeah. So
that's how you made it through, was essentially you floated the boat yourself.
Pretty much, yeah. I've floated the whole thing. I've not got any loans for any of the gyms. All the equipment in there I own outright. Like it's very much... It wasn't for me. I didn't want to go out and spend millions on equipment and then just be paying someone else back. Like I wanted to be able to build exactly how I wanted it to then keep going. So it was like, as this second gym is exactly that as well. Yeah. It's like, we just sort of acquire little bits here and there, and we'll just continue to do that, the same sort of process.
And so what led to you wanting to open Barbaric Barbell?
So basically moving up to Sydney, I ended up rolling, my partner ended up buying an apartment up in Campbelltown, which is about an hour north of where South Coast was. Yep. And it was very much just the whole first home buy things. Like obviously got to live in it for the first 6 months, and the idea was floated of, I wouldn't mind opening a second facility. And at that time, one of the gyms had closed down that do what we do up there. And I'd sort of the nod and like, I really need to, but then because I was living up there, I need to keep training. Like I need to, train on a monolift, and it was obviously getting into the strongman side and still trying to do the powerlifting at the same time that I needed all the equipment, and I could only get down the south 3 days a week. So being an hour difference between two gyms, it was very much, I can do it, but it's going to suck all the fuel. It's going to cost all the money. Like maybe I just look at getting a small shed. And that's exactly what we've done. We've secured a little shed that's about 120 squares. It's 14 meters long. So we've got the runway inside, and then we've just got all the strongman and powerlifting stuff either side. And so we've gone from there.
And that's really new, is it?
It's brand new. It opened the beginning of March this year.
Yeah.
So very fresh.
Yeah. And how's it going so far?
Good so far. Yeah, we're just over foundation memberships. So we're just over halfway on that, which is good. So it's doing well. I'm very lucky that a couple of the guys from down south work in Sydney. So they've I've offered joint memberships, kind of like an Anytime Fitness of, pay an extra $5 a week and you get access to both. So that way it gives everyone access. But yeah, no, so far so good. Obviously with that gym shutting down, we've had a couple of people jump across, which has been great. Yeah. It's going real well.
That's good. And right, so in the coaching was the foundation to build the gym. Did you start off just doing strongman coaching, or were you doing powerlifting? What were you doing? Are you doing one-on-one? Gen pop people?
Yeah, as a start, I was very much wanting to do everything. I was helping people with weight loss. I was helping people with strength. I was helping people, like just general population in this gym that I was working at the time. And then obviously as I started getting more strongman equipment, it was availability to offer the strongman side because I was doing it. I didn't really want to get into the strongman side because I didn't want to be one of those coaches that, I've done a comp, I can be a coach. Like I didn't want to be that. Like I wanted to really have a title and work for that sort of stuff. So as much as I offered the strongman coaching, it was the equipment that I had and it's what I knew. So I sort of started like that. From that, it was, as we moved into Port Kembla itself, obviously we started getting more equipment. It was then just starting to build from that and sort of building my education with that as well. So doing a lot of sort of short courses like the Sebastian Orebs and the, strength training, and I qualified ASCA, strength and conditioning coach. So I do a lot of their courses, both sort of sport related and strength related. So trying to get up my points for that way as well.
Yeah, well, so on that subject, you volunteer your time for the West Tigers junior squad as a strength and conditioning coach. How did that come about?
It came about when I was dealing with the ASCA stuff. So I needed to get my hours to sort of reaccredit, and basically it needed to be a sport that was recognised with the Olympics or something, or a sport that was recognised in Australia. Powerlifting and strongman isn't. Olympic weightlifting is, but those two aren't. So putting in the hours, it wasn't able to be neither of those sports. One of my co-workers was actually involved in the local rugby league development squads. And I was just having a conversation with him, and I was like, look, I understand your Group 6, which was our local teams that I used to play with. Do you know of any positions, up in the higher ends that I could potentially help out with? About 2 days later, he's like, how would you like to work for the West Tigers? I'm like, absolutely. Like, I'm a Bulldogs fan myself, but yeah, absolutely. I'll take the opportunity. And within the first year, I was working with the under-18s Junior West Tigers. So just working as S&C, we take them into the gym, we take them down onto the field, go through a lot of like the drills and the conditioning and trying to educate, because that was one of the biggest things with the Tigers is they would come to us at the end of their season to play development. So they would play their normal season through your March to October. And then from October to March, they would have the developments, which is you basically pick the best out of all the local teams and they then play the best of the other areas. So it was more of an education piece of like teaching them how to go through all their drills, making sure they're nice and fit, but then also educating them on the ball skills and stuff like that from like the other coaches. My side was very much getting them into the gym, teaching them how to squat properly, teaching them how to deadlift properly, teaching them how to move all that sort of stuff and then do it correctly. So that's sort of how that came about, and that was in 21. And since then I've done two 3 seasons with the under-18s, and I still volunteer with the winter developments, which is 13s to 15s. So they do that as part of the school holidays in the middle of June, where they sort of take 1 day a week, and we give our time to go down to a field and blister and cold and just sort of get them to run a couple of drills and try to teach them, and then they go back to clubland. So yeah.
So in that work that you do, as like, because it's a strength and conditioning, obviously there's the training, which is separate to the training for the sport, but you're still running them through drills on the field.
Yep.
And what's the culture of, like, having not been a very sporty person growing up? Like, I played basketball and stuff like that, but I never stepped foot in a gym until I was 30, in my 30s. Okay. I just, like, that wasn't my world at all. Looking back on it now as a coach, I'm like, there's so much that's missing in Australian kind of strength and conditioning that we're just not around the best ways to train to then bolster the sport. We seem to do a lot of training that is just sport, but rugby is one of those fields, like being from Victoria, like I was saying earlier. I look at AFL, and my nephew was getting recruited by the AFL, and I was looking at the training that they get them to do, and it's very, they just kind of let them do their own thing, and a lot of it's just running.
Yes.
Obviously, you need to be able to run a lot on an AFL field.
Yep.
But there's not a lot of strength, right? And you see lots of hamstring tears, you see lots of ACLs, all this stuff that seems to be like it could be preventable if they did a lot more strength and conditioning. And having moved up here, I see that the rugby's kind of, they've got a firm grasp on that. What's your experience been like coming from the kind of strength world, looking in on NRL, having played NRL as a young man? How's the strength and conditioning culture, and what's the training look like?
Our off season was very much like they did in season. So it was like your off season, the goal was to get as big as strong. Like, so I was a second row, front row, second row. Our goal off season was to get as big and to get as strong as possible.
Sure.
Because then what we found on season, we would drop nearly 5 to 6 kilos in a season purely because of the changing of strength and conditioning through the actual season. We gain all the weight to then build as much strength and power. And then on the season, we obviously start running, it might be 40-minute games, 50-minute games. Like, the whole game itself is 80 minutes. Yeah. But it's like we're only on there because we're the big guys that pick the ball and run as hard as possible and hit the wall kind of thing.
Yeah, you're not on there for 80 minutes.
Exactly right. So, like, as a front rower side of things, it was very much our goal was to get as big and as strong and as powerful, like explosive probably would be the better word to use, to then, when it came into season, to then continue with the conditioning to make sure that I could play a longer game and focus on that conditioning side to then keep up with the game itself.
Sure.
So basically needing to be explosive, that after a tackle I was still strong enough to then pick myself back up, get back into the line and then be ready for another run, or at least go back to the back line, wait, and then go again kind of thing. And you do that for 40, 50 minutes and then sort of interchange and go from there.
So the training that you would have done as a young man, now being a coach, how much is that? Is there a big gap in the difference of what you would do with the West Tigers development squad versus what you did as a young man?
Absolutely. It's so much more science. Yeah. Like, when we do the development squads now, it's like we work with physios, we work with sports scientists, we work with, like, as I'm the S&C, where it's like we've got this game plan of, okay, this is how we're going to build both front and backpack to be the strongest, nimblest, athletes that we can, and look at it on a position basis now. Whereas for us, it was like, all right, the big guys just need to eat, need to get as strong as possible, lift as heavy as possible, go through that. Yeah. And then the backpacks would be out running laps and just trying to get their conditioning to make sure that they're good for the game. Yeah. Like, that's what it was like back when I was sort of growing up. Whereas now it's like we break the fronts and the backs in the gym. It's like, okay, the big boys are doing the explosive, the strength and all that sort of stuff, whereas the back rows are very much the conditioning and they're still doing explosive, but they're doing sort of like on, say, field of sorts. The front rowers are doing your 10-metre sprints, your 20-metre sprints, whereas the back row are doing fields and runs and doing long-term conditioning. Okay. So,
and what sort of strength movements are you looking at?
For all things, it's very much your power cleans, your deadlifts, your squatting, all that sort of stuff. They're very adamant on, obviously, the lower leg power because being rugby. Once you sort of hit, I've got to stop calling. So rugby's union, league is then RL.
Yeah, that's my Victorian.
Yeah, no, I got to make sure I clarify that. It'd be the same for both sports, I'd assume. But yeah, with the front pack is very much building it as explosive as possible through your deadlifts, your squats. Basically, that to imitate that if you were in a tackle or you're about to run, you're ready to go. And that's, as we just said then, with the injuries. The biggest part is with front rowers, it's like they've already got to run on when they get the ball.
Yep.
Their goal is to then hit at speed and then continue to push. So it's a lot of like the sled drags, the sled pulls, moving backwards with it, focusing on the hamstrings so that if they do catch someone that's running towards them, they can then slow them down. Sure. Simple movements like that aid on the field and try to imitate that movement on the field as much as possible as well.
So with the squats and deadlifts, are you using straight bars?
Yes.
Yep. So no trap bars or anything?
We use on the deadlifts, yes.
Yep.
We use more the trap bars. Again, with the Tigers, it's what we have access to.
Sure.
So we train out Southwest Sydney. It's at a private boys' school. The access to equipment isn't great, but we made it work for what it is. The squatting was very much your front squats, very front dominant. Your deadlifts were with your trap bars, or your dumbbells, just focusing on that downward pressure, and sort of making the imitation movements as best as possible.
Yeah, but you're kind of taking out some of the, like you're mitigating some of the risk of straight bar work. What sort of squats are you doing to build?
So my last season, I focused a lot on the front squat and the Zercher.
Yeah.
Because obviously the idea of when they grab someone and they start moving, you want to make sure that you're as strong as possible in all those little tendons, all the biceps, the shoulders, everything like that. And then, with like the trap bar is very much that explosive off the ground movement.
Okay. So, and you're doing this stuff heavy, fast, both?
Off season is trying to build up to your 3RM. So obviously we don't believe in going to a 1RM because there's actually no need to, and obviously the risk associated with going stupidly heavy at a young age. We still push them to go heavy, but it's within their reach. I was very lucky with the Tigers. We had a lot of offsiders to help and watch and make sure that everything was going right. The last thing we needed is some young fella loading 200 kilos onto a bar and crumbling and just doing some damage. So, we were very lucky in that aspect of everything was leading up to, on the off season, was to a 3RM. But we would do that for almost a 6-week block. Okay. So again, we don't get them for too long. We kind of get them. Trials start at the beginning of October. We lead the off season up until January, and then from January they then start their season. Development for the 16s and 18s is a 5-week round with finals. The SG and Harold Matts are usually a 9-round and finals, so it's a little bit longer of a season.
So you got 6 weeks to build up to a 3RM. Are you doing that in a linear approach, or? Yeah,
they very much. They preferred the linear approach. Again, as much as they gave me runs to choose what I wanted, we worked with the top S&Cs of the West Tigers and their scientists and stuff like that, of this is what we believe is the best route, to then focus on that sort of plan. Like I would design the plan and they'd be like, take that out, add that in, let's do that. That's a great idea. What we'll do is we'll make sure that we've got all S&Cs when we go towards those last couple of weeks to make sure everything's leading upwards. Yeah, okay. So it's very, very much about leading linear approach up to a top end. Yeah. Obviously hope that they didn't blow it over the school holidays break, as most of them did. Yeah. And then get into the off season, which is back to your 5s, 8s, movements, explosive movements, stuff like that.
How long do you generally have them in the gym for? Like per session?
Per session, we usually got 45 and 45. So you'd have 45 on field and you'd have 45 in the gym. Yeah. So an hour and a half session. The way the days would usually start is we would get there at 5. Like training doesn't start till 5:30. We'd run them through like your stretches, your dynamics, your shuttles, all that sort of stuff to make sure everything's moving well. We would then go up into the gym and get all that sort of conditioning work. Depends on which access we had. The team's altered. So if you're 16s, they may have started in the gym, then go onto the field, or the vice versa. Yeah. But for the guys that we sort of had for the last couple of years, it's been like we would start in the gym, we would warm them up, go through all that movement, and then we would then get them down onto the field and go through all their conditioning. In between, we would always break it up, so it'd be like a conditioning drill, then it'd be ball work, and then it'd be conditioning drill, ball work, and then we'd finish on, if obviously people weren't listening, the coach's discretion, it'd be penalties.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah.
So that 45 minutes, you've got them in the gym to do weight, like strength work. How many movements are you looking at?
3 to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'd get them straight into the bikes, rowers, all that sort of stuff to like get you warm, moving. We would then have 3 to 4 exercises, and it would just be run like an A, a B1, a C2 kind of thing. Yeah. And then like some weeks on season, it would basically be circuit work, just keeping them mobile, keeping them strong on a set weight. Again, the front pack would be split to the back pack of weight wise. They would try to keep everyone through the off season. We would be able to get the analytics of numbers, and then on the off season, on the actual season itself, we would then be able to build those plans from that.
Okay. So you like splitting them into groups based on how much they can lift?
Basically.
Yeah. So you're sitting there before the session going, oh, this group's in this range, and then you're working together.
Yeah, it's usually 4 to 5 athletes.
Yeah. Do you try and have someone in that group that is kind of a bit more switched on than some of the younger ones?
Yeah, well and truly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you could always tell who had already been in the gym and who hadn't.
Sure.
Like, because coming from the junior development as well, you get to the 16s and the 17s, and a lot of those kids have never been in a gym.
Yeah.
So it's like we sort of sit those guys with the ones that you can tell train, the ones that go to the gym regularly, the ones that are doing the extras outside their training, and then they go to the gym as well. So you could always tell, you could pick up who it was, and if there was groups that sort of didn't have that, then they'd be the groups that I would more focus on helping as well. So,
And so you've got them for how many sessions a week?
3 sessions a week.
3 sessions.
Yeah, so usual Monday, Wednesday, Friday with a Saturday or Sunday game.
Yeah, and do you split those like upper, lower, or are you doing everything?
Yeah, so it's hip, pull, push, something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so they split it up very much like your push, your pulls, or your hip movements.
Yeah, and are you using bench on upper body?
Where possible. I haven't put a lot of bench into my programs. More, it's been a lot of your push-ups, movements of that. That's again more focusing on how they perform on the field. So a lot of downward, like banded push-ups and all that sort of stuff. Okay. Focusing on sort of their off-the-ground explosiveness to get up. But yeah, bench wasn't a real big key in a lot of their programs. And it's the same, like they, especially with the group that we were, they didn't want normal deadlifts. It was always trap bar and stuff like that because there was no real turnover for what they wanted. They wanted their feet close. They wanted their nice explosive through the quads, all that lower build.
Okay. And so if you're running 3 or 4 exercises per session, you've got a main movements are on, like if you've got squat day and you've got your squat, what do those other exercises look like?
So it could be going from a squat into a Nordic, and then it could go into a lunge or a box step or something like that. So it'd be your main power movement. It would then be a reverse of either a push or a pull. And then it would then move into like a body weight, whether it be a step up or a lunge or a reverse lunge or something like that.
Yeah. So you're putting most of that energy into that first one, and the other ones are less loadable, but still more isolation.
A lot of one thing that I did notice towards the end of working with the 18s was it started getting like the accessories are very much single leg movement. Because trying to focus on, it was always the left knee or the right knee or whatever their dominant ACLs were going, ankles were going, all those sort of things. So we'd focus on the main movement and we would then split it into single leg movements to focus on the strengthening of that.
And did you see good results with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was from when I used to play, I think you'd probably see you'd see at least 2 or 3 ankles, 2 or 3 knees, in a season. And in our seasons, it's down to almost 1 to 2.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're saving 1, then that's seems to be an improvement so far.
Yeah. And so from what you said that you've got the more, not the more experience, but like the head kind of strength and conditioning coaches overseeing all of this as well. And so it's a very involved process if you've got a lot of help.
Yeah.
And do you find that you can look up to them and go, hey, I need help with this? Or are they expecting you to kind of get it done and then they top down and go, right, this is what we need to change?
Yeah, they want you to sort of take charge and take lead, but at the same time, like I'm, it's something that we haven't discussed yet, but it's the idea, like I've gone back to uni now.
Yeah.
Like I've gone back to do my sports science because the education that these guys have, I want that as well.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to say, okay, I'm asking you a question, you're telling me why, but it's like I'm, trying to learn that way, but I also then want to have the extra education to keep me going.
Yeah.
So as much as I did all my ACA and I did a couple of other short courses, And I was like, all right, cool, what's next?
Yeah.
Like, where can I be better?
Yeah.
Like, and then I start looking at the coaches that I'm working with, and they've all got Bachelor of Sports Science. Cool. That's where I go.
Yeah.
Let's get into that. Let's start understanding more stuff like that.
Yeah.
I went to an ASA event with the head of the S&C for Roosters, Alessandro, and he's got a master's in strength and conditioning and a master's in high performance sport.
Yeah.
Up to the eyeballs in Hextet, but it's great, like great piece of paper, but it's education as well.
Yes.
So it's like I've kind of now planned my trajectory towards that.
Okay.
That sort of I want to get into being a master of strength and conditioning, like focus on building that knowledge so that I can then distribute that and help people elsewhere.
Is pursuing the strength and conditioning for teams something that you're going to pursue that further through this process, or because you got a lot on your plate?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
I'm just sitting here thinking, when the fuck do you sleep?
not much.
2 gyms, full-time job, your own training, plus your own clients, plus uni, plus
It's very much clockwork.
Yeah.
it's very much clockwork. Like,
do you have a lot of whiteboards in your house?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I've got a lot of boards. I've got a lot of notes. My partner helps with a lot of reminding, but on the back of the front door, I pretty much have 4 months in calendar on the back of the front door, and I just like every day before I leave work, all right, cool, that's where I'm at, cool, and then I leave for the day, and that's sort of how I play my game plan.
Have you always done that, or has that been something born out of necessity?
Yeah, it's something that's been built over the last year or so. More for the fact that because I am starting to load so much onto my plate, I'm starting to forget shit. It's very much like, not so much for like the clients and stuff, but it's more like events, who's where. Like, so on my Sundays when I do all my programming for my athletes is very much cool. Like I've got my board of when all the events are and where all my athletes are leading to. And it's just a matter of then planning from there for them. And then it's going from that. It's like, all right, cool. This week entails Tigers, gym. These days I'm at the gym. These days I'm at South Coast. These days, like the Wednesdays, I say with the Winter Development West, like looking at that.
Yeah. So something, before I got into the gym, I was like super forgetful for one. Also prone to being very stressed and anxiety ridden by plans. And like when I first met my wife, I was like, I don't want to plan. I want to do all this. And then we had kids and that all goes out the window because you have to. You've got no choice.
Exactly.
And then I started adding whiteboards into my life to keep on top of this stuff. I was really resistant to it because I was like, fucking, I don't want routine. But it's the thing I needed most in my life was like some rigidity. Once I start at whiteboards, it's such a simple tool. And I've like had this conversation with one of my good friends recently. She was talking about being very overwhelmed by plans and stuff. I'm like, get a whiteboard. It will change your life. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it sounds ridiculous. Add a whiteboard. And she's had it up for a couple of weeks. She's like, it's made so much difference. I'm like, I told you. It, like, I've got 4, I think. I've got a podcast, content, work one. I've got like a work diary one. I've got a family one and like something else, another like maybe an idea one. But they just to get it out of your head because your head's only got so much space. And like when you're busy like yourself, adding that sort of shit in is very useful. You got to cut. Your brain is not infinitely able to compartmentalize stuff. So if you can get it out and like get it on a board, you look at it and go, right, this is where I'm at.
So my biggest thing has been, all right, what's up this week? And just focus on that. Week by week. You know, and as much as it's like I've sort of said it to a couple of people, it's like when I sort of started everything and started doing all the gyms and all that sort of stuff, like I was winging it. I was just hoping for the best. And, you know, if I look at it now and obviously it's already shown in the second gym that it's like the second gym has already grown so much faster than my other one did. So I'm like making really great progress is because I'm structured. Everything's there and I know what I need to do for the week. So I'm being better on my media. I'm being better on all that sort of stuff. And it's like now that I've built that structure, so it's so much more easier. You know, whereas the last couple of years, it's like, I'll admit, I've just been winging it and hoping for the best.
At least then if you've got the structure too, you don't have to think about what you're doing. You're following a structure. It's like, I need to post today. I need to do this today. I need to do that. It's not like, oh, I need to come up with this and when can I do that? And like you start, then it blows out days and you go a whole week without doing a post or doing.
It's a snowball.
And it just, then it catches up with you. So on that front, you do all your programming Sunday for your clients. What does because Strongman programming is something I'm really interested in.
Okay.
I find it very fascinating because it's an awesomely overwhelming, complicated sport sometimes for a very simple goal. But like from a coach's perspective, I think it's really complicated. So what is your approach to building? So if someone comes to you and says, I want to do strongman, and they're like marginally strong or they've never really done a lot, what does that look like, the start of that journey?
I guess from like even the old days back when I was in sport myself, it's like I remember my old man saying, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
Don't overcomplicate it. Like as much as we're in as you said, a complicated sport of so many different lifts, so many movements, all that sort of stuff. It's like, all right, say as you just said, then someone coming into the sport, beautiful. Let's build a base.
Yep.
Let's build a base of overall strength. You would look at a linear approach and build it from there to see how far you can really push. And then once you get to a point of where you see that can then be moved over into skill and technique. So I feel that like I came into strongman already, I guess, call it power building. Like I was very much, I wanted a big squat, I wanted a big deadlift, I wanted a sort of big bench, but it was very much, my incline was, 160, 170. My deadlift was already 310. Like I was doing really good weights. It was just about the technique for me. So like I sort of came in and I was lucky enough when I went into PTC that one of the gentlemen in there is like an older gentleman. He's been in the sport for quite a while. It was, you've got the muscle, you need the skill.
Yeah.
You just need to when it came to the log, I'm trying to bicep curl the log. Like just think, oh yeah, cool. I got to get up there. And because I've got the strength, I was all right. Like I was able to. He's like, yeah, until you tear your bicep and you're screwed. Yeah. Like, you'll only get so far with that. You need to learn the technique and the skill. So from a beginner's approach, it's very much, let's build a base of strength for that athlete. Let's introduce a couple of movements where, say the yoke, for example, it's very much a matter of picking up correctly and then taking one step in front of the other. Mm-hmm. Trying to keep it as simple as possible. You don't overcomplicate it with them because then people start tripping on their feet and they start taking it too fast and it starts digging in. It's trying to focus on educating them as well of, okay, with the yoke, for example, you start running with it, it digs in, you're done. Like it's going to whip behind you. It may whip you in the back of the neck, hurt like hell. Yeah. You can potentially cause injury. Like you want to keep it as basic as possible.
So to just focus on the yoke for a minute, a particular one, like one of the ones I like to teach with yoke particularly is that you're picking it much like you would pick a squat out of a mono. You wedge your hips in and pick it up because then your center of mass is right where it needs to be for the yoke. And one common thing I see a lot with people is when they pick the yoke, they don't do that, for example. So we'll add that in. That's a pretty easy fix. They pick the yoke wider than they're going to walk. So I'm like, but then your first step's got to be in. And then your balance is fucked. So if you're thinking about something that it moves around like a yoke does, like it's got its center of mass, you have to be in it. Yep. And you actively have to control that. If you take a step from wide to in, there goes the center of mass, and you're then creating momentum you can't recover from. Yep. Would you agree with that? That's
absolutely.
A good thing to say.
Absolutely. And the way that I sort of say to people on the first picks, like I always get them to do a couple of squat picks first.
Yeah.
Go through the movement. Let's see where your movement pattern is of getting under, like, and it's the same with the hands, like, where you hold the hands wide, up high, down low. If you're flexible enough to get underneath and hold it on the back, it's then seeing that, okay, you've got to realize that when you're standing with a yoke, no matter how heavy it is, the moment you then take that step, you've just loaded that entire hip structure, knee and ankle system downwards with all that weight. So you need to make sure that you can be comfortable enough to know that it's going to be 1, 2, and just limiting the amount of pressure. You don't want to exactly stand on one leg and have all of that weight bearing down through hips. You're eventually going to cause injury and strain. Yeah. So it's like holding, as you just said then, with that wide. From that movement of going wide into that step, you've now forced all of that inertia and force into your lower back and hip structure to take all that weight. So as you just said, you want to be nice and strong where you would with a squat to then take the step directly and then move.
Yeah. Well, and the pushback I'd get from that, from teaching people that or trying to change that about their technique with the yoke is I feel stronger picking it here, but I feel comfortable walking there. It's like, well, you need to get strong where you feel comfortable walking because you can't do it and then pick a max yoke and take it for a 10-meter stroll. Yep. Like you're just going to run out of steam and wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. And like looking at it from a top end perspective as well, it's like I think the most I've moved is 450. And it's like if I was to go for a wide stance like I do with my squat in powerlifting, if I was to then shift in, that's 450 kilos I've just loaded through the entire right side of myself.
Yeah.
And it's like I then expect my body to then move forward.
Yeah.
I've moved the inertia that way, and then to move forward, of course, I'm then going to start jumping and moving and all that sort of stuff because I've just thrown everything off. Whereas by standing and, you know, with the yoke under super heavyweights, you'll see that when the guys pick it, it's like it's just a matter of you probably hit your heel. Like you're on your steps, you're only slightly moving across.
You're essentially shuffling, so you're keeping, you know, 2 points of contact most of the time and just moving. Yeah, you look at the best that do it, and it's really like you're dragging heels across the ground to maintain contact all the time. And I watch a lot of people do that when they're new to the yoke. They're trying to run one too fast, and it's just like it's going to get behind you and push you around real quick.
Oh yeah,
and it's going to dig in, like you said, it's going to hit the ground. You're done. Okay, so once you've built that base, the yoke fascinates me. I hate doing it, but I love
it's a great event. It's definitely one of my favorite.
It's just it looks less complicated than it is. I think there's a lot to it.
Pick and walk.
Yeah, it's really not very complex. Like you just pick this thing up and walk with it. It's like, but like if you want to do it to them.
At performance level, you need to make sure you take into account everything each step.
Yeah, and that's true of every single lift in every single strength sport. If you want to do it to its absolute potential, then you have to get all this, the minutiae of it correct. So once you've built this base with your strongman and you start moving into them expressing strength through skill with events, do you try and spread that out broadly? Do you like pick areas of fascination for them, or are you literally looking at like, are you going to do a comp? What are the events coming up?
Yeah, so for someone who's coming into the sport, there's obviously something that sparked their interest. So it may be, as you said, the yoke. It may be the stone. So it's like everyone loves the stones. Big concrete balls, let's lift them up onto a platform. Like it's always the, all they see the yoke with the fridges and stuff like that. It's like that sounds like a great idea. Let's go do that. It's looking into the specifics of, okay, you want to focus on those movements, let's break them down. Like before we get into the full range of motion, so let's use Atlas stones for an example, it's going through the breakdown of the movement. So obviously you go into a deadlift first, you're then standing up, you're getting it into your lap. From there, you then go into a squat, all right? When it's up nice and high, from your squat, you're then going to upright row it, up your body, up onto the platform. It's breaking down those movements and getting comfortable at obviously a lighter weight and then slowly progressing in weight to get bigger.
And so when you're breaking it down, which I love breaking lifts down and training, I train the segments of the lift. Is that something that you do in your training?
Yeah. So like using the stone for an example, like stone picks, you know, your goal of executing a perfect stone pick is the start of the lift. So if you don't have that down pat, you're not going to get it. So you need to focus on that main movement. And say they've got a breakdown in their hips to the lower back of the clean. All right, cool. Let's do a lot of picks and then just do the rolls. Go straight up, back down to your lap. Straight up, back down. Breaking that down into that movement. And not so much if they want to go to a competition, then we go through the entire movement. But if they're wanting to just learn the basics and then get into it, that would be how I would approach it.
And do you train it through other movements that aren't using the implement?
Yeah, so it's like with, say, stone, obviously you add in your zerches and your front squats, very front dominant. Your goblets, your Bulgarian split squats, very much quad dominant, calf dominant. And then obviously going through like GHD movements, holding the weights or bands and stuff like that, going through a GHD of sort of pulling yourself up because it's that extension. Upright rows, simple movements of that. Like looking at, again, if you ask any of my athletes, I keep my programs as simple as possible. I break down what they're wanting to get better at into different movements. So like say the lock. All right, I'll go through heavy cleans. Focus on swinging as much weight to your chest as possible. Don't worry about the press just yet. Your goal is to get that part down pat. Or if you're going to viper it, take all the weight down, go through the whole row momentum up to the top. You want to go basically see what is required for those lifts. And then if, say for the log example, you would then go, your warm-ups would be through dumbbells, going through the motion. The same with your barbell upright rows as well, introducing into that. It all crosses over in a lot of them. Like the same way I teach my log is the same way I teach my stone. So it's like, you think about it, it's your deadlift first, your squat, you clean, you press. Besides, obviously, the stone, depending on what event you're training for, there might be a stone press or the stone to shoulder. So it's like it depends on what they're sort of wanting to lead towards, if there is a comp in mind, or if it's just them wanting to say, I want to throw that rock to the top of my shoulder. Cool, let's break that down.
Yeah. Let's get you stride. I think that this is one area of powerlifting that is kind of started to miss the mark, is that they're training the movements constantly, which is useful, and you get stronger doing that. Then not breaking down the lift to train the segments of the lift, where we're just training like our variations where we build the muscle groups of the lift. It's like, that's great too, but sometimes, particularly with technical work, and I find this is where Strongman comes in, and we could learn from some of that from in the powerlifting world, is that you need to break down segments of the lift that are harder.
Yep.
So like, heavy lockouts for bench, for example, like learning how to strain in that position that is difficult for you is going to be really useful. Strongman tends to do that pretty well. I see like a varying degree of people's training. I think most of the guys at the gym now are coached by Lee, Strength Zen, and I really like the way he coaches. It's very interesting. But before that, like before he was coaching them, they all had a lot of different coaches.
Yeah.
They were all doing a vast array of different things.
Yeah.
And then my strongmen do wildly different things to all of them, which they love, because it's just like they're the weirdos.
Yep.
But I'm very much big on the base for strongmen too. Like my strongmen squat a lot.
Yep.
And they'll generally use safety bar, cambered squat bar, a lot of chains, not so much bands, but a lot of chain work, and lots of heavy safety bar squats, good mornings, stuff like that, because that carries over.
Absolutely.
Heaps, particularly good mornings with, log, stone, all of that stuff. But I think it's really useful, but powerlifting is kind of missing the mark a little bit. We need to break those lifts down and to go, what element of this lift do we need to make stronger?
Yeah.
And how can we make it stronger through a similar pattern?
And it's looking at what they're doing and how they can improve that lift as well. So like obviously we were up at GPC New South Wales, two of the guys that competed in the under 75s, it's like, all right, watching them how they're lifted, say one of the athletes when they do the pause on the bench, that was one of the biggest things that was an issue. All right, beautiful. So this next block is a matter of coming down and resting on the safeties and powering out. All right, cool. You got to train yourself to come down and be comfortable in that position to then power back out and build that strength out of the explosion. But you've got to sit there first and rest. Don't take a breath, but sit there and rest and then go. So it doesn't matter when they get the start call. They're comfortable in that position, because that was the biggest thing. It was a mental thing for him. It was a matter of, I'm holding this weight, my arms are shaking. Call, please do the call. And then, so this is now in, come down, sit, power out, and be comfortable under the bar on that. Yeah,
I think pin presses are great for that. If you're weak off the chest, pin presses like coming down and pausing, or doing dead presses off the pins. Like if you have to create all that tension from the bottom straight up, you're going to learn how to be tight in the bottom.
Exactly.
And there's one thing that like, it doesn't really annoy me, but I find it amusing when people come to comps and they're like, oh, the press calls are really long. It's like, you should be strong enough to just handle it.
Yeah.
Like, just deal with it.
Yeah.
Like,
and
watch the press calls before you go on the platform. You know what you're going to get. And if you're getting a long one, it means you're not tight. So
well, one thing I do with my guys as well, like the week leading up to a comp as well, we sort of got together and going through, and it's like just on the deload, it'd be a matter of like, all right, let's go through the calls. You go your press, and like each rep, you would get longer on the start call or longer on the press call, just to make sure that they're ready. Because it could be 2 seconds, it could be a 0.2 second, like, it could be anything. But you sort of familiarize and get them ready for that you'll get a call, whatever judge you get on the day. Like every judge is different. Like, you're always going to get a different call. So be ready.
I like doing that too. I do longer and longer, and then the last one I get it really quick. Just to mess with their head. Like you give them 3 reps, and it's like the first one's pretty long, second one's really long, and they're like, all right, the last one's going to be really long. And you do it as soon as it hits their chest, and they're like, oh shit,
throws them.
I like doing that. But so back on the strongman stuff, where how are you approaching it? Are you looking at it linearly? Are you building stuff through just kind of playing stuff out via feel, like RPE kind of base?
My programming style in Strongman is very much finding what works for the athlete. Like I'm very much like I only take on 15 clients a year, like in a block. That way I can make sure that when my athletes are in the gym, I can watch them and I can see what they're doing well in. I can see what they're doing poorly in. Like even our check-ins weekly is what's your best lift of the week? Show me the video. What's your worst lift of worst lift of the week? Show me a video.
Yeah.
And then breaking that down and seeing where they can improve. So when obviously, as I said, we start on a main block of getting as strong as possible on a linear approach. But then when it gets to the, like say, comp prep of sorts, let's call it the comp prep, looking at those movements and then, okay, I know that this athlete's an under 80s athlete. He's quite fit. He's ex-military. Let's focus on, you know, him doing a lot more movement in the yokes. But when it comes to the static movements, he's a little bit far, like he's not up to where he could be. Cool. Let's focus on doing sort of higher weights in a 3x3, 5x5 kind of motion leading into that, and then sort of top sets, whereas the yokes and farmers are very much picking heavy weights, but doing 3 sets of 10 or, you know, doing a couple of 5 meter runs at super heavy or even picks. Because obviously, you know, feeling 400 kilos over your back for 5 seconds, and obviously, you know, you count nice and slow. You tell them to use a long word. Mississippi, you can go Mississippi, like straight off the bat. Yeah. My things is like, you know, South Coast Strongman. Like, count to 5 South Coast Strongmans.
Yeah.
So they sit there, and it's like you can see it saying, you can see their lips moving of what they're doing, but it's teaching them to feel the weight of what it is. And then from that, a back off set would be 100 kilos lighter. Good. Pick. But I want you to pick first, then walk. I don't want you to just pick and run. I want you to pick, feel the weight again. This is good. I've got this. Run. Yeah. Like looking at it from that approach. Like it's the thing that I find with a lot of my athletes too is because I've got grip athletes, I've got strongman athletes, I've got powerlifting athletes, general population still a grip athlete, like, you know, a big vast array of different style of athletes. Yeah.
So putting one methodology on all of them.
Yeah, it's not going to work. Like don't get me wrong, when I first started training, that's exactly what I thought, because I thought my way was best, and let's plan them all the same and let's see what happens.
As we do
absolutely. We learn. And then from that, and that was why I started realizing that, you know, by becoming more individual and seeing what they feel comfortable with and what their movements are, building that off, you know, more from a comfortability aspect as well. Like you want them to push far and push hard, but you also don't want them to be uncomfortable in a lot of movements of saying, I don't want to have to go do 8 sets of this, 8 reps of this. Like that's going to hurt and that's going to suck. And then you start killing their vibe, and you don't want to, they'll eventually turn or they won't come back or something of that nature. So it's like using one of the other junior athletes who's powerlifter at the moment, that it's, you know, he does really well in top sets and 3s and 5s, super heavy weights, where it's like, I then move him to anything 8s or higher, form starts breaking down, movements start getting tiring, he starts fatiguing more, and it's actually, he's not recovering as fast because he actually works at the steelworks down in Wollongong. So it's like he's doing shift work, he's all over the joint. You know, he could come in and have a session that he's pulling stupid amount of weight because he's had a great night's sleep, and then he's had a great meal, and he's come in and trained absolutely perfect. There's going to be days that he's going to come in after 16 hours and he's not going to be able to do his warm-ups and that sort of stuff. So for guys like that, I try to use the RPE approach, but I still try to give them, this is what I would like you to hit in the range. I know what you're capable of because I've seen it, and I've seen your lifts, and I've seen your footage. Yeah. But I also understand, you know, this week you're at nights. Yeah. Having that approach. That's why a lot of my athletes, when it leads to competition itself, I do weekly. Like, all right, cool. Show me your footage. Send me everything your first and your last, and we'll address from there. Yeah. Other clients, I can obviously then do longer periods of like hypertrophic blocks and stuff like that. Beautiful. This is where you've started. I want you to sort of approach it as a linear approach, work your way to get as strong as possible. Yeah. So every athlete for me is different. Yeah. So like, and I've got 1,000 different sort of methods that I see with them and what they're sort of leading towards as well. And then leading with a couple of others that have got injuries, and, you know, they're just a matter of prehab, getting them back into the gym. Yeah. So what have you got at home? Beautiful. Yeah. Let's do that. Yeah. So you're coaching the person in front of you. Yeah. Yeah. It's not, you're not coaching, right, this is my way. Yep. This is how we do it. You fit in or fuck off, basically. Yeah, basically. Yeah. And that's why, like, I sort of pride myself on the tailored approach. It's like, I want to help you, like, you know, the question you sent me about, what's your philosophy? I was like, my philosophy in training is very much help that athlete get as strong as possible in whatever they want to do, but also look at it from a long-term athlete development. You want to make sure that we can still get to masters. We want to make sure that we can still run around with our kids. We want to make sure that, when we do hit your 50s and 60s, we're still able to reasonably touch our toes or at least get close.
Yeah. I guess unless they come to you and go, I don't give a flying fuck about that, but then at an ethical level, you don't want to break them just because they say break me.
Yeah.
I don't think there's many like that, but I certainly have a few clients that you just got to pull them back a bit.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, just
chill. We'll get there.
Take your foot off the accelerator a little bit. Well, I have a similar approach, and I think it's just you build your toolbox you fill it with as many tools as possible, so that whoever stands in front of you with whatever goal they have, you've got the tools to get there. Because inevitably you're going to come across someone, if you're rigid to a system or rigid to an idea, that comes outside that, and you just have no idea what the fuck to do. So you have to go, all right, I've got this, shed full of tools. And if you come to me and go, here's a curly one for you, I've got something in the back there that it's like, oh yeah, that's always been my approach. I never give warm-ups to people. Usually I'll ask them what they do normally. And I love to be able to, if they're an online person, I love to be able to get them into the gym. Can you at least come in once so I can see how you move and stuff like that? I had PT before I came here today with some people that I coached from Dubbo, and just seeing what they were talking about, this is going on with my shoulder, and I just went to have some manual therapy done on it, and it was all jammed up in here and blah blah blah. It's like, okay, I've got something for that. Go grab bands. Let's do this. This is what we're going to do. And it's like having that. I wouldn't have told her to do that just based on what she said necessarily. It's like, oh, my shoulder's feeling a bit funny. It's like, okay, well, here's some generalized kind of warm ups. But if you've got the person in front of you and you can see, it's like, oh, this is exactly what you need. But if you didn't have all those tools and you didn't work with a vast array of people, you wouldn't have them.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you just get stuck working with the same type of people, I think that's,
become institutionalized.
Yeah, something that younger coaches really need to focus on is don't just coach natty powerlifters, or don't just coach strongman, try and coach other people too. Different ages, different makeups, even if you have to just go, hey, let me coach you for free for a while so I can get the experience.
Go for the experience.
Yeah. Just because you got your Cert 4 doesn't mean you can start charging for coaching. I saw that the other day. It's just like, did you know I've got my Cert 3 and 4? It's like, should I do online coaching? It's like, no, you shouldn't. No, what you should do is coach some of your friends for a while and pick some that have different goals and try and find a way to help someone that's got something that they haven't been able to get help with through a general kind of approach. And you're going to get infinitely better at your job. So looking at what you do, powerlifting, strongman, gen pop, then the footy, you've got the gamut. Pretty much. So your toolbox is quite full, I imagine. So I really like that approach is a client-centric one.
Yep.
Yeah. Has that always, obviously you said before, my way was the best way when I first started, but was the intention to always be client-centric?
The idea from the very get-go was to help people. And I guess that obviously came from when, I was sort of younger, that it was even through soccer, I was always the bigger kid. It was always all right, I need to, be better myself, and I need to build the best version of myself. So that I sort of had that sort of approach coming into training as well, that it's everybody's going to be different, and everybody's going to be looking at, how they see themselves, and how can I make that a better approach? It's all right, cool. What do you work better with? Do you work better with, the hard approach? I started out very much all right, this is what we need to do. And I understand that, you might hate these movements and stuff like that, but you need to sort of focus on this to get better at that. Trying to approach them in that, but then sometimes it's knowing when to be fair but firm as well, that I understand you're having a shit day, and I understand you want to call it, but you're already here. Let's keep going, and then you can go home. It's, trying to put the tough love of sorts without, being too far as well, because you get the clients that you say something like that and they'll end up in tears and running out kind of thing. So, it was very much building it around the person, and, when I was working in construction when I was younger, and it sort of went up into site management, one of the things my old site manager told me is like, when you're dealing with people, you've got to have a different hat approach to every person. Yep. So, you know, you can have a different approach with the concreters, you can have a different approach with the painters. It's going to be a matter of getting the best out of people to make them think that they're doing it, even though you're just kind of leading, okay, this is your goal, this is how we go there. You're still doing it, but I'm the tool to you to get you to that option. That's like, you know, where you get athletes saying, I want to go New South Wales Strongest Man. Cool. Yeah. This is what you need to do. These are currently the weights of where we're at. You need to get strong and you need to then get into those particular movements, and that's your goal. That's where you aim for, and sort of lead them into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like managerial roles are like having come up through numerous jobs that I hated in my life, because I was a musician, and I've talked about this before. I just did every job I could that I could quit at a moment's notice, and the managers that I had exposure to were fucking awful. They weren't good managers. Yep. And I've been in better jobs where I have had those good managers that guide you through. Their job is to manage you. That's what coaching is. Yeah. We're there to manage your expectations, your performance, your skill adaptation. Like, our job is essentially not telling you what to do, it's facilitating how to do it. So it's a good approach, I think. That.
And another thing to sort of touch on that you actually had in your first one with Leroy, it's like we're coaches. Yeah. We're here to educate them, and we're here to, again, lead them with all the tools to get better. To then, like, one thing that same thing that got told from that exact site manager as well, is like, your job is to make your job redundant. Yeah. So you teach them, you give them all the tools for them to go further on. Yeah. So that same client that I used to work with who wanted New South Wales Strongest, we got him there. Yeah. From that, it was like, look, I'm going to go work with XYZ, who's a now World's Strongest Man competitor. Go for it. Yeah. He's at the top level. That's where you want to go. Like, I push that. Yeah, yeah. Like, I know so much, and that's obviously why I'm still trying to educate myself, but there's always going to be something I don't know. Yeah. And then with that toolboxes, I've got physios, chiros, scientists as friends. Like, if I don't know anything, I can ask, and I can lead them that way. And if I don't know the answer, then, hey, look, go talk to them. Or if you're wanting that extra level of coaching, go see them. Yeah.
I've done the same thing where I've moved people on. It's like, that's not my area of expertise. Could I do it? Yes. Yeah. Is it going to be as good as someone else? Probably not. Yeah. So I'll find someone that I think will be a good fit and move you on. Like, it's not a personal thing. It's like, this is best for you. Yep. So you got to know where your limitations sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where does my expertise run out, and where are my toolboxes kind of, the tool is to refer the work on. You know, you're not going to do the concreting if you've got concreters on site.
Yeah, exactly.
So why not pass it on? So the goal is to help people. Was there a figure in your life that kind of did that through sport? Did you have mentors and stuff like that growing up?
Not really. No, like the idea of like, I think that was it. I think it was the lack of. I've come along this journey as I want to be someone who I would have needed. Yeah. So it's like, I've kind of built myself in a position of, you know, that's the whole building the gym was to build a gym where I felt comfortable and that I would want to train at, because there was nothing worse than, you know, and I'm sure you've done it in past, is you walk into a gym and it's like, you can already feel the vibes off. You can already feel like there's tension or people hate each other and all that sort of stuff. And you don't want to go near that. Yeah. You can feel it. But it's like, you know, I wanted to build a spot where it's like, you know, as much as, and I say to people all the time, it's like, you know, whilst you're in my gym, like, I may pick on you a little bit, just because I can see you doing something that may cause injury, or you may do something that could be a little bit better. And I don't look at it as I'm picking on you. I'm just trying to help you. Yeah. And that's very much the vibe in my gym, that it's like, I try to approach it from that aspect. And the people in the gym, like, obviously, you know, they've all got their coaches or they're a coach themselves, but it's like, do you need help? I can see their last set was a bit of a struggle. There's no need to try a third set without anyone behind you. Cool. Yeah. I'm happy to be that safety. Like, let's be that. And I try to build that as well, that it's like, you see some videos that get shared of the gym. It's like, everyone's yelling at each other. Like, everyone's like, yeah, like, let's do it, lift it. Like, you know, come on, like, you know, do all that sort of stuff, and trying to build that as well of like, same thing of, I guess, training by myself at a younger age. It was very much like I was just doing it for me.
Yeah.
Just trying to do the best I could, and trying to build the best that I could be as well. So that's very much where I'm at now of like, all right, you know, I want to be able to build what I didn't have and be that as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's very much the approach. So don't get me wrong, my old man sort of instilled the whole work hard, you know, keep it simple, but, you know, do the very best you can. But the idea of sort of helping people in that nature as well and trying to be that as well.
Do you find that when you moved into that role of doing that for other people, that it helped your own training?
Absolutely.
Your training like I know you said you still train on your own and stuff like that, but when you got around more people and created a community around you, did you find benefit in that with your own training?
Absolutely. And the big thing, I actually did a post with the gym, I think it was yesterday or the day before, it's like we're building a facility that builds like-minded people.
Yeah.
Whether that be in whatever sport you are, it's, you know, as much as we talk about we're building the place to come in, train, do what you need to do and sort of bail out. Yeah. It's very much like, you know, in the prep to GPC this year, it's like we had 3 other athletes that were all leading towards the same comp. Yeah. So we'd all work out, all right, cool, Thursdays around 2 o'clock, we'll all be in.
Yeah.
All right, cool. We all squat. Lucky enough, you know, we're squat similar heights. Beautiful. Let's just start adding weight. Let's go. Like, you know, let's focus the program. Let's, you know, focus on that and let's get it done. Yeah. So that's definitely been, you know, working really well.
I had this conversation in the gym yesterday with a guy who's new to our gym.
Yep.
He's like, oh, you know, I really want to come here and I really want to take my lifting more seriously. And I was like, well, you've definitely come to the right place for one, but we're talking about, and I've spoken about this before, like people are kind of intimidated by strength gyms. Hunter Strength's very intimidating for some people for some reason, even though it's like the friendliest gym I've ever been in my life. But everyone's really strong, so that's intimidating to people. But like I think that what I said to this young fella yesterday is like being in an environment where people inherently understand that you're taking lifting seriously. It's not just something you're doing for general fitness or to look good on, you know, in a tight shirt on the weekend.
Yeah.
You know, your pursuit means more to you than that.
Yep.
Everyone here understands that. Like, that's a given. You walk into this environment, everyone gets that immediately, and you don't have to explain that to anybody. So if you want to put your headphones on and not talk to anybody and yell at yourself in the corner, we're all for it. You know, if you want to take the headphones off and laugh and joke between sets and like jump in and help everyone out and like, you know, be a part of the community, we're all for it too. Yep. Like your goal is
your thing.
Understood, you know? So I think that's probably the best thing I've ever found in gyms, full stop. But strength gyms are those places.
Yeah.
It's like we get the goal. The goal is shared because it might not be, we're not all doing strongman or powerlifting or weightlifting or CrossFit or whatever, but we're all trying to do something to a high level.
Yeah.
And that goal is kind of like, it's just inherent in that building. So therefore the energy is kind of like, you're not silly for wanting to do this. You're like, we get it.
Absolutely. We're all in the same spot.
Yeah.
You know, we're all fighting the same demons. We're all sort of battling the same sort of, you know, goals and obstacles just on a different level. So we all understand that. So.
Yeah. And I think that then in turn creates that community of understanding, whether you might not really see each other outside the gym, but you're best friends.
Yeah.
You know, like some of my best friends are the people I train with and we only really see each other at the gym.
Yeah.
But I know that I can call on them for anything if I want, and like I can go there and not have to talk about anything. Like, you know, be in a bad mood and they'll be like, yeah, cool, whatever. Like there's people that I know walk in and I'm like, they've got a big squat today, I'm not talking to them.
Yep.
Till that squat's done.
Yep, absolutely.
Because you see it, like as soon as they walk through the door, I see the look on their face, I'm like, all right.
They're in tune. Ready to go. Yeah. Leave them the hell alone, get it done.
They're in game mode. So, yeah, it's like you said, you recently came up and did states and won the super heavyweights division with the 770 total. Yep. What did your training look like pivoting away from strongman to peak for that meet?
The idea of doing the powerlifting has been very much the time that I have to train is not a whole lot. Again, as we've sort of discussed schedule-wise, like I can only dedicate 3 days of training at the moment. Yep. So with that 3-day training, it is a squat, bench and dead day. It's to keep me moving. And the reason that I do it to compete is I'm still very competitive in nature. Yep. So I still want to lead towards something of an end goal. So it's like, you know, the idea of, all right, cool, I can dedicate 3 days of training. let's focus on the basics. I've always wanted a good squat. I've always wanted a good deadlift.
Yep.
The bench has always been an ongoing battle. It is what it is. But it was still the matter of, all right, I need to still work towards something. Like training for me has been great, but I need to, and just in life in general, I need to lead towards something.
Yep.
Like building the gyms, building my career, building, my life outside that. And training is no different. So it's like I need to lead towards a competition, and the powerlifting side was very much, all right, the strongman comps I do are like static monsters, which is basically a strongman's version of push-pull.
Yeah.
It's the actual dead in the log. All right, cool. Like I did that last year in Canberra, but there was like, all right, had some time off over Christmas. Like still did basic training, but wasn't leading towards anything. And then I seen Hunter put up states was a bit earlier this year.
Yep.
Beautiful. Let's lead towards that. Let's go for that.
Yeah, normally we have it in June.
Yeah, in the June long weekend, which used to be the long weekend for New South Wales Strongest Man.
Yeah.
That was why it was kind of, when that freed up, it was very much like, all right, cool. I can now do that in the middle of the year and focus on that as my sort of 6-month goal of sorts. It was, the training wise is, squat, bench, dead, heavy like movements, focus on the main movements, focus on the forms, a couple of variations, and just getting it in before clients and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And did you achieve what you wanted to achieve?
Yes. Like my goal for the squat, the fact that I got the 320 and looked reasonably well, it was my plan. Yeah. Like my main plan for the competition was last year I finished on the 300, the 140 and the 287. My goal was to basically, first lifts were to get on the board of all three. The second lifts were 5 kilos on what I finished on last year, and I did that there. And the thirds on all of them were Hail Marys. Yeah. Just let's see where we can push.
Swing for the fence.
Yeah, basically. And that was the whole idea. And same thing like the last year when I was 125s, the same thing was the guy that I was going up against had a good 100 kilo on my total. Yep. Like my goal was just to do the best I could. This year was very much the same. I just wanted to beat. That's the one thing I enjoy about powerlifting. It's just beating your total. It's like, fair enough. Like some people are super competitive. Like I want that title. Like I want to be GPC super heavyweight champs. Like it doesn't really fuss me. Like, yes, the medal's nice, but that's the thing. We get the medal, we walk home and it goes on the wall. Yeah. Like that's as far as it really goes.
It's the ultimate metric of total.
Yeah.
You get to like constantly push that total.
Yeah, and you can continue that. Like, so, the 770 is a great number for me. Like I've always, back when I used to train when I was younger, like I'd, sort of had the big benches and the big deadlifts and all that sort of stuff. But now it's on paper. Yeah. Now it's on the records board at the gym. Now it's like I'm starting to build that up from there. It's no more about the ego lifting of the bouncing off the chest and pressing it. It's like, this is called, this is papered, this is where it is, but it's also a number that I can then beat.
Yeah.
So the next competition, I want to aim for my 800 total. Yeah. I want to push through all that. And it's like now you're starting listing physios and all that sort of stuff to help you get there better. But that's, again, your tool case. So
that's it. So what was your best total before that? Obviously in a lower weight class.
Yeah, so the last states was the 300, the 140, and the 287. At that, I weighed 123.4. Actually, I think it was 1234. The last 12 months, I've sort of been going through some medical stuff myself, and I've gained quite a few kilos. Like I weighed in states this year at 144.6, so I was 21 kilos gained. Yeah. But it was very much about keeping moving, keeping sort of strong.
Yeah.
And then just a matter of sort of beating that number. Like it was my biggest goal of this comp was, all right, I've gained 20 kilos. I need to add 20 kilos to my total. Yeah. The fact that I added 30, I was like, bonus. That's sweet. I'm good. Yeah. So
a good PB total.
Absolutely.
And so are you going to do nationals if you get an invite?
If I get invited, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ironic, same thing. It's, I look at the nationals rankings on the website thing, and it's, you got the next guy above me is on a 900 total. Yeah. I'm like, all right, cool. So let's aim for 800. Like I'll get as close to possible. But I just want to sort of push and see where I can go again.
Yeah, yeah. Ultimately, like it is a sport where you get to at those levels you can compete against those people. Yep. Sometimes it's just so far away. Yeah, you just got to compete against yourself.
Yep.
So like every comp, I will inevitably get asked, "What do you want to total next time?" by someone. Like, usually my wife.
Yep.
It's like just more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like my goal is obviously the nice round number of 800. You know, the closer I can get to that, the happier I'll be.
Yeah.
But well, then that's, you know, the one thing that I found of the last prep was it's the mental side of when I was younger, like I always squatted, it was always sort of around the 250s to 270s. And that was the elusive 300. Like I wanted that 300 squat. And the fact that I got it in States last year, I was like, cool, I've got it. Now what?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it sort of had a couple of weeks or a couple of months off training of like super heavy squats, but it was like, all right, like I've done it now. Like I kind of need to keep pushing. Like part of me was like, well, you've got it, you know, just be mindful of your knees. Like you still got footy knees, you still got footy ankles. Like be mindful. Like, you know, you still want to be able to, you know, continue on. But yeah, the fact that I got to 320 in this prep, I was like, there's still more room to move. Like I still feel okay. You know, all right, let's see how far we can keep going.
So what were you hitting? How many times were you hitting 300 plus in the gym? How many times you hit that?
I led in the probably 4 weeks out. I think the 4 weeks out was a matter of actually I think it was only 2 weeks out. 2 weeks out I hit a 295.
Yep.
I then pushed a 315 in that session. And even then that looked like an 8. I was like, cool, like it's 2 weeks out. I don't need to continue on. But it was very much the last sort of 5 weeks leading into prep. The 4 weeks was the ramp, sort of top doubles, top singles, leading into it, just without overthrowing it. Because I know the moment I start doing a lot higher reps at higher weights, my body jacks real fast. Yep. With the higher weight, I've been dealing with a jacked back and a couple of back issues as well that are old football injuries, unfortunately. So my goal was just to get to comp with as little pain and as little issues to make it of sorts.
Yeah. I think that is one of the greater goals of powerlifting is like just make it to the comp without being too beat up.
Yep.
Because if you've built that strength, you can express it.
Yeah.
If you're not too beat up.
Yeah.
Whereas if you push it and express it all in the gym and beat yourself up, comp day is going to suck.
Yeah.
And you see it a lot where people are like, they're posting their training totals and their training totals huge.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, but like that's a lot.
Yeah.
You're pushing hard. And it's like, yeah, you got to push hard sometimes, but you're pushing too hard.
Yeah.
And then you watch their comp day performance and they flounder.
Yeah.
Because they've missed it. They've like, you know, they've pushed that level of strength expression to the limit 3 weeks out or 2 weeks
they've
out.
already hit their peak.
Yeah.
And they're still a while out.
That's it. And then you get to comp and it's not there anymore. You're already deconditioned somewhat and stuff's moving slow in the warm-up room or...
Yeah, and the way that I look at that as well is that it's like, even with my guys, that sort of the 2 to 3 weeks out, we're sort of looking at what we're going to open with and what we sort of get as a gauge to where we sit. And then it's a matter of when it comes to competition, comp days are always different. Like we can have a full day of work, full day of food, and have a great session of an afternoon.
Yeah.
But when we weigh in at 9 o'clock in the morning and we're lifting at 10, with maybe one meal, like, you know, we're going to try to really push the boundaries of our body there. But at the same time, when it comes to like the squatting, it's you're in the safest position to go as far as you can.
Yeah.
Save it for that.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to do that in training. You don't need to crumble. Like, you know, unfortunately in this prep, I did crumble 295 over my neck.
Yeah.
That it was.
Were you on your own then?
I had one guy behind me.
Yeah.
By the time I rolled, it was too late to save me.
He's not saving that.
Nah. There was Trent, the one that did the 125. So he's strong, but it was just by the time I'd already hamstring went up, neck went down, it just rolled straight over. Yeah. But that was purely because I got too cocky. I did the 270 with a soft wrap and I flew.
Yeah.
Like, I got this. Like I can push my session a little bit further, and I started getting in my head and doing exactly that. And then I went to the 295. Hit the base, hamstrings went up, ass went up, head went down, and just straight over. But then that was the thing. It's like, I know I can do this. Like, get out of my bloody head, wrap myself again, pulled it back up, did the squat.
Yeah.
Like, got it done. But it was that little bit of humble pie that I needed 3-4 weeks out of like, settle down. Like, you've got this. You know you've got this, and you know you can squat it.
Yeah.
So just take your time.
I think with newer people, it's like trying to convince them that they're confident, they can be confident enough to do weights because you know that it's there. Like as a coach, you're like, this is possible. You just have to have confidence. And then that pendulum can swing too far the other way. And they're like overly confident. And like, I know I've got it. Like, you know, you don't like just back it off.
Yep.
Well, even if you're confident, you get it, but you like your ego takes over, and it's like I'm gonna fucking smoke it.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as you start doing, you've done the rep before you've done the rep.
Yep.
And then you get under there and you fuck it up because you're just too confident.
Yep.
You see that happen a lot.
Yeah.
It's good to eat humble pie.
Absolutely.
Especially as a coach, because then I can pass that on to our lifters.
Yeah, well, it's what is it? No, it's not always gold. I mean, you need to, you know, be aware that shit happens and get on with it.
It does. I like the idea of leaving some, like, obviously I push like max effort work in a conjugate system pretty hard sometimes, but there's a time and a place for it to be like balls to the wall.
Yep.
And then there's a time and a place for it to be, let's leave some in the tank. I very much like, as I get closer to comp, I want some in the tank. I want to know that, like, if I'm doing my opener 3 weeks out, that it's moving like I've got 60 more kilos there. Yeah. You know, it's not a 9 RPE, because I want to take my third attempt's going to be like 60 kilos above my opener. You know, especially in gear, I get to take those big jumps. But, you know, if I'm opening on, like last comp, conservatively I opened on 300, ended on 340. 340 moved like an opener.
Yeah, cool.
And like I was happy with that because it was a small PB and I wasn't pushing hard that comp. But I know that there's next time I want to take that first one that I can be confident as hell. Yeah. That I can push it under whatever circumstances I get. Like if the depth calls are rough, you know, you got to adjust for that. You don't want to go out and go, oh, my best gym lift is 300, so I'm going to take that. Yeah. As an opener, and then you get stapled.
You get red lighted, you know, you're not squatting at depth, you're not bloody getting flagged for it.
Yeah, and then you have the inevitable meltdown because you're not trained to standard. Yeah. And you get frustrated. So, well, as we're winding up here, where you've got the 2 locations, you do training, as you said before, you're only taking on about 15 clients. Are you taking on clients at the moment?
I am, yeah. Yep. I've got currently 11 athletes at the moment, so I've got 4 spaces. So
yeah, and do you like have a preference where they come from? Strongman,
I like
powerlifting?
Both.
You don't really care?
I like all. Like I feel like I like all different levels of athletes that I can sort of help along the journey. Obviously, the newer athletes I like because I get to enjoy the ride of, you know, seeing start from small like I did and leading up to the top end. But at the same time, I like working with top level athletes as well, that it's like, you know, going to the Pro Raws and all that sort of event and having an athlete in that's like a great experience for me and the athlete, that it's like, this is awesome. Like this, I'm a part of this, you know, and I'm a part of their journey to do it as well. So, Yeah,
very cool. So I'll put in all this information in the notes as we post this stuff later on, but what's the best place to contact you?
Barbaric Strength is my tag. And
on Instagram?
On Instagram. Yep. And then it's the same overall. So the coaching is Barbaric Strength over all socials. South Coast Strongman is over all socials, and the same with Barbaric Barbell.
Yep. And what's next for the gyms? What's next for you? What's next for...
if I get invites to nationals, we'll be leading the nationals. But very much focus on the second gym and build that to be what South Coast is down south, up in Sydney. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the goal.
Great. Awesome. I love how busy you are. You're like a shark. You don't... If you stop, you die. Pretty much. It is... you're making me tired talking about how much stuff you do. I feel like I'm tired, but... I've got 3 kids. That's why I'm tired. I'll tell my wife that one. She'll laugh at me and go, "You're tired."
Yeah, I'm the one looking.
Yep. Awesome. So all that information will be in the show notes, and for the gyms and for you as a person. And I wish you all the best in those endeavours. Largely, and like I always like to tell some sort of personal story as why the guests are on the show and why we connect and stuff. And like, obviously a couple of shows ago, I was talking about the incident at Capo States that involves your partner and yourself. And that's kind of where we connected. You knew me before I knew you, which I felt bad. I knew your face, but I was like, I don't know, I've probably spotted you somewhere. I reckon I spotted you at States a couple of years ago. But you've like that incident, and I was listening to you guys talk, and I kind of involved myself in the conversation, which is not my usual MO, but I agreed so much. I was like, I fucking agree with you. But it's those moments where you kind of realize, like, I heard you talking, I'm like, you feel the same way about this stuff as I do. Like, that's largely why I've reached out and gone, hey, fucking come on the show, because I like, we get it, you get it. it's about being a good person.
Yep.
And I think, and I probably say this every show, people keep giving me shit because you keep saying the same stuff. But everyone on this show is going to come on for a reason. It's usually the reason is because I've connected with them somewhere along the lines and I've seen something in them that's gone, this person is motivated by giving back or helping or being a good person, and they're leading from the front essentially. So I wanted to say that about you. I think that you are a good leader in the strength world and someone that people should look to as a guiding light out there. So thank you very much for making the trip today.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you again soon.